Hey there, Alan Mathews here. In today's big lesson, we have Mauro Giuliani's Allegro. This is a great little piece, and you just heard it, so you know what it sounds like. You don't have to play it that fast, but it is Allegro, and Allegro means fast, so ideally, we cook the thing. So let's just take a look at this full score to begin with, and then we'll talk about all sorts of stuff. So let's dive in. So this is the big score. I know it's small on your screen because I wanted to fit the whole thing on here. But I just want to take a bird's eye look at this and just look for any sort of patterns that may be coming, any sort of repeat signs or roadmap, things like that, anything that says DC Alfine or anything like that. I'm not seeing anything like that on here really. No repeat signs, no sections broken up. It looks like it's one big thing. What I am seeing is this pattern right here to where we've got a lot of eighth notes. I got a lot of notes bouncing around, and we seem to have a pattern going on. There's this type of bar, and then we have this type of bar with the quarter notes in the bass looking down here, like this right here. And then it seems like it happens again, just back and forth on that. So we just go back and forth between these types of bars here. This is just what I'm glancing at. It might not be this way, but this is just what I'm looking at. So then once I see that there's this thing, this is an arpeggio pattern right here. It's just, it's not really notes looking like a scale or a melody. It's just notes bouncing all around. So I'm figuring it might be a chord that I just hold on and then just play a pattern. So how long does that go on? And so I just want to look for similarities, just the back and forth. Boom, 4 notes in the bass. Boom, 4 notes in the bass, boom, 4 notes in the bass, boom. Okay, this changes a little bit. Boom, boom. But then we have our 4 notes in the bass again. Boom, 4 notes in the bass, boom, boom. Okay, and now this looks like the same. Yep, this looks like the same. Oh, but this changes. We have half notes down here, and we haven't had half notes yet. And so this looks like a different section then, right at the ending. And so basically it's the whole thing is kind of the same stuff back and forth, these two ideas back and forth, and then at the ending we have kind of a different thing with some half notes in the bass. So this is our overall bird's eye view of what's happening. There are no big repeats or anything like that. Now let's zoom in a little bit here. And this is the top section. This is the very first, very top of the page right here. So looking closer now at what we were just talking about, this is true then. We have a bass note here, and then we have 4 bass notes here, and then another bass note, and then 4 bass notes. And then this happens, this is our pattern here. With the top, whenever we see something like this, one of the things that we can look for is we're looking for patterns. We're looking for anything that repeats. And so one of the things that I immediately see repeating is in this second bar here, this A in the top. And this is with the 4 notes in the bass, and the top note is just staying the absolute same. And so then if I see that, then I want to go and check and see if that's the case for the other bars that are like this. So here's one with the 4 notes in the bass, and lo and behold, yes, it is the same. Let's go to the next one. This is a G sharp, G sharp, G sharp, G sharp. Yep, that is the same. Coming over here, where does it happen again? 4 notes in the bass. So this seems to be the pattern, that whenever the bass is moving in quarter notes, that the top note is just staying static. This is just something, we're just looking at things right now. The other thing to look at with this then is what's happening in the other bars. So we know that's going on. What's happening in the other bars? So let's take a look at that as well. Let's just get a clean copy here. So here we have a clean copy. And so we're just going to take a look at this very first measure and say, okay, what are all these notes bouncing around up here? We've got, whenever you see these type of things, one of the things that you can do is just stack them all together and see what you come up with. And so for this right here, we've got, let's just take it and put it right here at the beginning. We've got an A, we've got a C, and we've got an E. Is that it? That is it for the measures. We've got A, and then an A, C, and E. That's not terribly defined with that, but it's A, C, and E. That's not very defined either, whatever. But here we have a stack of notes. And whenever we have a stack of notes, it's probably a chord. And so then the thing to do would be to figure out what chord is this. And this is a thing you could just go to your guitar, play the notes, and say, okay, what is this a part of? What are my cowboy chords? If you don't know your cowboy chords, your regular open position chords, then that would be something for you to definitely learn in the very near future. Find out what this is, and I'm just going to tell you it's an A minor. You have a couple of options here, but if you look at all the notes together and say, what chord do I know that only uses all of these notes and doesn't have any other ones in it that would cancel out one of these, then A minor is the chord. And so we can look at this as an A minor chord. And so once we know that, then we can go through the rest of the piece and figure out what those chords are as well. And I'm not going to give them all to you here, going through the entire piece, but I have on the bonus material, there's a lot, there's like 9 pages of stuff, of ways to practice this and things to look at, considerations to take into account, different things for different stages of your learning of this piece. So be sure to go over, find the link below, and download that stuff so that you can actually have that. It's really a bunch of different ways to practice this so that you get it very quickly and also you really understand it very well. The tendency whenever we go to learn a piece is just to start at the very beginning and say, okay, what is my first note? It's this note, and what am I going to do with it? I'm going to play it, and then I'm going to go to the second note, and then I'm going to go to the third note, and then the fourth note, and then the fifth note, and I'm just going to proceed on through the piece like this. And it's a terrible way of learning because it doesn't take into account the way that music is created. And music is created through patterns and through shapes. It's created through chords and through scales. So if we can find out, if we can discern, if we can kind of put on our detective hat and find out what chords are making up the piece and what scales are making up the piece and things like this, even if we don't know the name of it, if we can just say, okay, it's that shape, and then it's that shape, and then it's that shape, so that we have it in clumps in our head instead of just note, 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 note. It's a hugely valuable way of learning, and it's the way that music is created. And so it is the language. It's just like if we thought in letters instead of in words. You know, mainly we think in big ideas. Those big ideas, whenever we want to express them, our subconscious just chooses words to come out, but we're not thinking about the letters within those words unless it's a word that we shouldn't be using in the first place, and we're just trying to use a big word. But typically, I'm not choosing these words right now. I'm just thinking what I'm thinking, and these words are coming out. It's the same exact way in music. You want to get to a point where in your playing of the music, you're not having to think about each individual note. You're thinking about larger structures like chords, like scales, phrases, sections, even the whole piece. With time, you can think bigger and bigger chunks. So let's take a look at something. So now we've discerned. Let's just catch up to where we are so far. So first off, most of this piece is this back and forth thing between two patterns. This big chord pattern right here, and then the 4 on the floor bass thing, bass moving in the next one. And then it mainly bounces back and forth. That's basically the piece, right? So let's move on from there and actually say, let's go to the next level here and say, where is the melody? What actually is what is the point? What is the main lead part? And what is the supporting parts? So if it was a band, who's the front? Who's the backup band? And in this case, it is going to be, one of the ways we can tell this is what has the moving line? What has the most action in it, the most interesting part? And so if we look at this bar right here, if we look at this bar, by far the bass has the more interesting part because the top is just A. It's just A's. And so the bottom part is actually the moving line. It goes up and then it comes back down. So this is actually the moving part. And so now that we see that, we can back up and say, is that the case in the rest of them? Is this the case here? Yes, it is. Is it the case here? Yes, it is. So we can just look around and say, okay, probably the bass has the melody for most of this piece. So then we can just try this out. With that, then we can just ignore everything else. And that brings us to this right here. I've actually done this for you, and this is in the downloads as well. This is just the bass. It's the same piece, but this is just the bass all by itself. And so we have now, I'll just play it for you. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So now we have just the bass. And here we can actually do some work because this is the framework of the whole piece right here. If we can make this good, we can make the piece good, right? I mean, there's other things to consider with how we play the other parts, but this is the main juice of the piece. I just played that, and it sounded okay just by itself. Granted, I was singing along with it while I was counting, but still, it sounded fine, even if that's all you play. Listen to it without me singing. Sure, it's not as interesting as some things, but it's still an interesting line. It would be fine. It would be a beginner piece, right? So then what we want to do is we want to get this bass to where it is absolutely stellar. We want to just play this thing to where we got exactly what we want to do with it and get it masterful and then put it back into the whole picture. Practice the other stuff by itself as well and then put it all back together. Kind of a separatist view, but that's how I like it. The other thing I want to look at really quick, and just by going through and doing a preliminary read on it, we got to this point, and boom, here we have repeated material again, right? So once we get down to right here, it's the exact same as right here. A, B, C, A, D, A, B, C, A, D, D, E, F, D, E, D, E, F, D, E. But here, it changes, right? Here we have this, and then over here, it looks like we're doing something different. And so this is where it changes. So let's name these, just for the sake of naming things. The A section up top, and then the A prime, and that's the A with the little 1 next to it. And what that means is that it's like A, it's cut from the same cloth as A, but it's not exactly the same. And you'll see this a lot of times in music where it starts off the same, but then it's going to change a little ways into it. And so that you could call it A prime. That way in your head you know it's similar to A, but it's a little bit different. And so that's why we'll call it A. I didn't make this up, prime with the little 1. But that's our general analysis on it. If we scroll down, let's actually do this. Let's scroll this down here and look at this. Then we do this, we go, first off, let's just look at how many bars the first A is. It is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then we start repeating 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Well, and then we start our last stuff, right? And then we start this half note business down here. This half note, which is a different thing altogether. So because that's all together, let's call it B. Because it's the ending, we could also call it the coda if we wanted to. We have that option. Great. So this is the basic lay of the land here. So let's go back to this bass part right here, and let's just look at how we are going to do the dynamics in here. So first things first, just play it. Just play it and count it and say, this is how long it's going, right? Or this is what it sounds like, basically. You can play in time the notes. Get that in the very first. You can also go through the 7 steps that the 7 steps videos and the 7 steps process that I've talked about quite a lot as well, and do this. And that's another way to learn this. But what I want to talk about now is dynamics. And what are dynamics? Dynamics are swells and fades. It's getting louder, getting softer, big all the time, playing loud all the time, playing soft, getting from one to another. It's the volume. It's having your finger on the volume knob. And that's what we're talking about here. In general, this is such a majestic thing. My tendency is to start it strong. And most songs, a nice strong first note, even if it's a quiet song, if you do the first note really strong, it might not be like crazy strong, but if you do it strong, then it actually announces, I'm playing the piece now. You can immediately get quiet after that if you like to, if you want to like drop the volume and then be able to grow from there. But make a nice entrance, boom, so that everybody knows you know what you're doing. It's like whenever you go up to a dog or a cat, you don't want to be hesitant and wishy-washy about it because that's going to set them on edge because then they don't know that you know what you're doing. You want to just be confident and pet them because then they know what you're doing. It's the exact same thing with listeners. If you act like what you know what you're doing right from the very beginning, they can relax and actually have a musical experience. If not, then they're worried about you and they're just wondering where their footing lies and everything. So you want to just be confident from the very beginning. Big note on the beginning, boom. From there, we have what we call the long short. And I've talked about the long short in other places, but this scene right here, we have a long note and it's followed by a bunch of short notes, right? Well, to begin with, short notes lead to long notes, right? So just to say that again, short notes lead to long notes. Just like my pregnant pauses, the words lead up to the pause. I'm saying something very important, and you really want to hear what it is. Not with that, because it wasn't that important, but in general, that's the case. So these short notes lead to this long note, okay? Well, if we start with the short notes loud every single time, if we just bust in right here, boom, and start playing right there, dum, 2, 3, ba da 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 dum, then we have to do it again, da da dum. So what oftentimes people do is they accent that first one, but it's the not the good thing to do. Instead, think about this very first note finishing the stuff that comes before it. And then those next three, they're the ones that go forward to there. And this is a huge musical complex. It's not huge, but it just happens everywhere. And if you can actually incorporate this into your playing, you'll sound so much better. It's not that hard to do. And if you can take note of where it happens and do it, you'll just sound so much better. So this is called the long short. We have a long note, then we have a short note. So a basic rule is the first short note of evenly spaced short notes like these are, after a long note, is quiet. In a perfect world, it's actually the exact volume of the decay of the long note. So the long note, dong, this is your volume right there of the next note because it's exactly what that one's died to. So it's like popping a balloon in the air. It falls down. You catch it right where it is. Boom. And then it just pops it right back up. And it just keeps the ball in the air. It keeps the forward momentum going because we're right in the first measure of the piece. We don't want to start over the piece in the second measure. We want to keep things going. We hit it once, boom, and we're just off and going. We don't want to sit this thing down until the very end. One thing on these small pieces, one red hot emotional core. Try not to let the ball ever touch the ground or let there be any kind of stops going on. Just boom, take it and run. One of the ways to do that, the long short. And that keeps the ball in the air. So to say this one more time, that means that anytime you see this, here's another long note, here's another short note of many short notes, that means it gets quieter to that note. From there, crescendo toward the bar line. For the rest of the bar, that means get louder, swell up as you move across the bar, up here. And then the way that we release across the bar, to actually come to the long note, that this is the point of, is if it's going up, if we go up to it, then get softer to it. That's what's happening here. If it goes down, then get louder to it. That's what happens here. So here, we did the same thing. This, finished that. These three went it this way, so we're crescendoing here. And because the C is lower than the D, We just keep crescendoing all the way through. And this is kind of the rule. If notes are going down, get louder. If they're going up, get quieter. Now, if you'll notice in these, the notes go up in each bar, and then they come back down, and then they go back up to the release on most of them, right? Or across the bar line. Because it's such a thing, I'm just making the judgment call. Technically, you could say, okay, this is the long short, so it's going to be quiet anyway. So just to talk about this for just a couple seconds, if your eyes glaze over, it's okay. I'll be done in 30 seconds. But just to talk about this for 2 seconds, if we have this first note is a long short, so it's going to be quiet, right? And then if our rule is that notes going up get quiet, then these 3 notes right here, they need to get quiet, right? Well, if we're going to get quiet, we're quiet already. If we're going to get quiet to this note, right? If this top note's going to be quiet, then we have to come down from somewhere. That means we have to lift up on this note. So it ends up being actually this type of thing. That it ends up, or just to put it into some decent space down here, it ends up being this, to where we get louder to the second, come down for the high note, crescendo to the next low note, and then crescendo back up. It gets a little bit congested with all this, and you could nitpick it like this, or you could say, okay, I'm just going to basically crescendo the whole bar, just one big crescendo across here, and that'll basically do the same thing. Now, you could practice it really slowly on the minute level like that, and then whenever you're actually playing the piece, you could just think, start the bar quiet with the first note, and then just get louder through the rest of it. And then release, and then just know if you're going up across the bar, this is your bar line. If this note is higher, it's softer. If it's lower, get louder. And so I think that this is the only place that it's actually getting louder. We can also say, since it's coming down here, so if you'll notice, we have this big thing right here. That finishes that, and then these go forward to that. So this is crescendoing. This note is still lower than that, so we're crescendoing yet again. This note is still here. We can crescendo that, or because we're starting over at the new section, we can just kind of round it off and not go all the way to it. It's pure. This is a moment where you can choose how to play this note. If you wanted to get back quiet again, you could. You could also play it all the way across the bar. I think this is how I did it in the recording. Go all the way across the bar with it, so you crescendo right to it, and then immediately get quiet again after it, like we were talking about for the beginning pieces as well. You could do the exact same thing up here. One big note, boom, and then just get everything really quiet, and then you can actually move from there. So this is basically the rules we're going for. The long short, and if notes go up, they get quiet. If they come down, they get louder. And in general, don't accent the high note of any group. So if you look through here, then it would be, here's your high note of this whole group, don't accent it. That means don't let it be the loudest note around. Look at this one, don't let it be the loudest note around. Ideally, make it one of the quietest notes around. This one, don't let it be high. This one, don't let it be loud, is what I meant to say. Good. So then let's just move on to the next thing here, which is this deal right here. This is whenever we're bouncing chords back and forth, right? So this is where we're bouncing this E back and forth, right? I would think of this as one big, we've been crescendoing all the way from here, right? From here. Dum, da, 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 dum, back off. Boom. Crescendo from there. Dum, back off again. Boom. This whole line here is basically a setup to get us to the end, right? From here, you're just off and running all the way to the end. We'll talk about the chords in a minute, but this is it's kind of there's a special role and a special thing to do with this bar. And then we get into this. And because we have this repeating pattern down here in the bass, or in these chords, from here to here to here to here, these bars are exactly the same, right? That. They're exactly the same. Whenever we have repeated material, we typically want to crescendo. This is a rule, but it works like a large part of the time, 90% of the time. So basically, start here a little bit quieter, piano, and just crescendo the entire bar. And really, when you're doing this, save a little bit at the beginning. Don't let it get too loud too fast. Really slowly inch it up at the beginning, and at the very end, pour it on. So it's not really a straight line like this. It's more like you go, and then it really flares at the end, it goes, and then it really gets louder at the end, like that, to where it's more exaggerated toward the end. This is a horrible looking line. It's more exaggerated toward the end than it is at the beginning. And that just makes it more exciting. So these are the basic dynamics. Go through the bass and just play it by itself and just get that. And always, always, always in your practice, exaggerate. This is not the time for subtlety. Oh, it's so subtle. Don't do it. Just exaggerate like mad. Make these as dramatic and preposterously swelling and getting soft and getting loud. Play your absolute loudest. Play at your absolute quietest. And really work those spaces in between. It'll make you a much better player. All right, here we are at the beginning again. And now let's just take a look at these chords. So this is the rest of the stuff, and that's this. And so we've already said that once we stack all these up, we end up getting an A minor chord. So this first chord is an A minor. And when we do this then, whenever we have this pattern and we see it is within a piece that it is, we've got this pattern going on, or we see that there are patterns going on, the thing to do would be to look at this pattern, look at the right hand part of it, and then, so P-I-M-I-A, I-M-I. The thing to do then would be to go and look at the next time this pattern happens, which is here, and here, and just look at these other ones and see if it's the same, because there's all these ones, right? So then the question is it the same or is it different in the right hand? Of course, it's different notes because there are different chords happening, but is it the same? And if it's the same, well, then that's pretty cool, because then you can save a lot of time by just practicing just the right hand by itself with open strings or with just whatever chord on there. Then you can save a whole lot of time. You can put that pattern into your arpeggio practice. Arpeggios are finger picking patterns. You can put that into that part of your practice. Whenever you're doing your technical work, you can just incorporate this pattern in there, work on it with all of the other ones that you're working on, and that way your technical practice is actually serving the piece that you're playing. Yes? So then that would be the thing. Another thing in your technical practice to do would be just to take this bass line and play it and use your different considerations, such as legato, so playing really smooth and connected. So just playing just the bass. And really listening to the connection of each note and putting that into your scale practice as well. So that way, your technical practice is actually serving the pieces you're playing. All of your playing will come up faster, and it'll be more interesting as well. You'll actually practice more scales and arpeggios and exercises if they're coming from your pieces, which is great. Because we want to practice to actually get good at this stuff. And we want to be able to do our technical practice and feel good about it and knowing that it's actually helping our playing. And this is one way to do that. So once we've got that then, and we know what these chords are, and I've actually labeled all the chords and everything for you in one of the downloads. So try it yourself first. Just get the blank score that just looks just like this. Get this and just look at it and just figure out what they are and just label them. This is an A minor. This is going to be this is our scale stuff. This is an arpeggio pattern. It's just the finger picking pattern. And this is our scale stuff because it's note by note. For this, da, 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 that's a scale in the bass is what that is. The melody has it. And then this is just this random note. Well, it's not a random note, but it is a note. And then you have this. And so then what is this chord right here? And go through and just figure these out as best you can. If there's any stumpers, then you can check. But do it yourself before you actually look at this. Instead of just thinking, these are the fingerings and I don't know what they are, actually try to know what they are. You'll be a better musician for it. You'll learn a lot faster, and you'll memorize this piece a whole lot faster by doing that. I memorized this piece in just a couple of minutes because I just thought it's the A minor chord with this arpeggio pattern, boom, and then I do this little scale thing, and that's the note that stays on top, and then there's this chord, and then with the arpeggio pattern, it's a recipe, and so all of a sudden it's not that bad. It's just like if you're living in a town that is on a grid and all the streets run just, that are all straight on a grid, it's not too difficult to say, okay, so I'm just going to go 8 blocks that way and 10 blocks that way. It's not that big of a deal if it's on a grid. If it's really wavy and all over the place, then it's easy to get lost. If it's on a grid, it's much easier. By thinking about this in terms of chords and scales and things like that, you're basically making a grid out of it. And so it just makes the map a whole lot easier to understand. This is the bass with the chords. So now that you've been practicing your bass, right? Now that you've been doing all of this, then what you can do is add in these chords. 2, 3, 4. 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. And you can just add them in as chunk chords and just play them P, I, M, A all together. Boom, just close your hand. Just like that. That way you're not getting congested with the arpeggio pattern. That's a lot of notes, and it's easy for especially players who are in their first few years of playing. It's easy for that stuff to really confuse the issue, to really muddy the water. So just get that out of the way and just don't even deal with it at all. Play a chord. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then just get it to where, if you'll notice, I wrote these as whole notes. They last 4 beats. That means you have to figure out what fingering you're going to use for all of this, and this is all written on the score, but you have to figure out which fingering it is so that it can hold the whole time. And so you have to make sure that that's happening. And so then this would be a way to do it. In this case, it's the 3 on this finger is the one you need. And so it's a way to do it. It also, you can work your fingering out on all of these. That becomes the 4 in that case. So as you do it, then you can see what works, where it lies. This comes back to the 7 steps as well. Look below for the 7-step process of learning all this, because that's more has to do with the basic nuts and bolts of getting the music in your hands. One more thing I wanted to look at, though, were these 2 chords right here. Let me just do this. Let me just erase that. And I just want to look at these 2 chords right here, this one and this one, because they're not normal cowboy chords. It's C, A, C, A, C, E. It's just a regular A minor chord, but then you reach your pinky around here like this and play the C with that pinky. And the way that we actually write that is A minor / C. You may have seen these before. A minor / C. And that just means it's an A minor, the way we say that. A minor with C in the bass is what this chord is. And A minor already has a C in the chord. It's up here, 1st fret, 2nd string. So it's not a random note. It's still a note from the chord. It's just now our low A is not in the bass anymore. The C is in the bass. It's called an inversion. So it's just a regular chord, but a different note is the lowest note that you're playing. And you would just say this A minor over C, or A minor with C in the bass. And that's how to say that. So that's what that is. No need to freak out or think of it as anything weird or different. It's simply an A minor with a different one in the bass. Same as this chord right here. If we play this, it's just an E7 with the B in the bass. So you're just not playing the low E. It's an E7. Also, if you know your basic cowboy chords, then typically you would play E7 like this with the 2 fingers. Well, that gives us an open D. In this case, we're just putting the D up top. So it's still in the chord. It's still the same thing we're doing. It's just it's a different voicing is what it's called for an E7. And then we're just not playing the low E. And then we have this chord right here, which is our E7 / B. And then we just get right back into the A minor. So I just wanted to mention those couple of chords to you there. I also wanted to mention something else that I'm doing slightly different at the end, and you might have heard it. I meant down here at the bottom of the page. then the music itself is pretty boring. It's actually... So that's what's written on the page. It's just 4 measures, the exact same thing, and it's just the arpeggio back and forth. And yes, we can make that as exciting as possible. We can make it as exciting as possible by starting really quiet and getting really loud. We can do our best with it, but it's still kind of lame. And so what I've done with this is I take this last one and I just speed it up a little bit, or I speed up the change. And now I'm not playing with the time, but 1 and 2 and 3 and 1. Like that. And that's just turning this into quarter note with this chord. So that just moves over, and then back to the A again. So just A, E, A, or A minor, E, A minor. That's really sloppy, but that's how I roll evidently. But it's just a different way, and I just like to do it that way. It's not written, it's not what Giuliani wrote, but just in case you were wondering, because I have a hard time playing this the way it's written and actually making it sound compelling and good at the end. So it's just A minor, E, A minor. I just think it has a little bit more pizzazz or something. So if you would like to do it that way, then go for it. And if you don't, then don't. And it's perfectly okay either way. Great. The other thing, just talking music theory, just a little bit more on this, and that is this chord right here. Because if you're looking through, this also, as we look in, this is the third line from the bottom. If we look up here, then we have this chord, and I'll let you guess what this is, but just think about the inversions that we were talking about earlier, and what chord does it look like? But then it's a different note in the bass is all. So this is a chord that you know, it's just got a different one in the bass. Same with this. This is the exact same as that, right? Same notes. Instead of this E, we're just bringing it down and making it a lower E. So it's actually the same chord, we're just dropping the E is all. Now this chord is a little bit different because it's, and that's not one of our regular open position cowboy chords. And so what is this thing? And what that is it's an E chord, but instead of the G sharp, we haven't gone there yet. We've been playing this A minor with this E here, and so this really blurring the line between E and A minor. This whole bar is, this whole line is just blurring blurring our concept of between A minor and E. And so what this does is it just takes it one step further, and it plays basically an E chord, but then we put this A in it right here. And that's called suspended sus. You see it sus4 sometimes as well, because the A is actually the fourth of the chord. So it's E, F sharp, G sharp, A is the fourth note in this E scale. And so it's called a sus or a sus4. And then it resolves in the next measure. It actually does come down to the G sharp, and then we just play the regular E chord. And so this is an E sus, and then it resolves to the E. And this is done a lot in music. It kind of just lets it float. It prolongs the action just a little bit. You know what they say, that satisfaction is the death of desire. And so we just prolong the action of saying, we've got A minor, we're not there yet still, now we're getting there, boom, now we're there. So it just holds it out a little bit more and makes more drama, makes more excitement. So that's what we're doing. So put that into it when you're playing it, the drama and the excitement, because we like that, so long as it's not melodrama, of course. The one more thing I want to talk about, and then we're going to call this lesson a wrap, is this right here, and that is how we actually play this arpeggio pattern right here. Because we don't want to just bang it out, right? It's not good that way. It's not all equal. It's not all level. We want to move forward in our playing, and we want to lead across the bar in general. That means we want to kind of crescendo this across the bar a little bit. That means that we have to come somewhere. So this is what I suggest. This is how I suggest handling these whenever they happen, and handle them the exact same way every time. Don't make it crazy. Just handle it the exact same way every time. I'm going to jump over to this one. Is play your bass note however it needs to be, right? And then be very quiet for these. And think about these 4 notes, or these 3 notes, are leading to here. That we have for this chord. We have our bass note, and we have, that's really quiet because it's the high note, just like we talked about, right? Just play that all very quiet. You don't even have to do anything crazy with it. Just play it all very quiet. Then the last 3 notes, crescendo them across the bar. Listen. So we have note, 4 notes of quiet, crescendo, whatever the notes are. So we take the first 4 notes, the first 4 black notes are all very quiet and very even. The last 3 we crescendo like crazy. And then we have to actually pull back because the first note is the long short from our melody again. And so then we don't have to be crazy with these. We just give them a little bit of, we just lean into them a little bit. So listen to the way it sounds. Let me do that again when I actually play it. And then to here. And then to here. And then to here. And you can think about the last 3 notes saying, and then to here. 1 and 2 and 3. And then to here. 1 and 2 and 3. And then to here. 1, 2 and 3. And then 2. And then 2. Practice that so that the loudest note of the arpeggio pattern, not counting the bass note, is the very last one. This is oftentimes the one that gets thrown away, but it's the most important one. It's this one. This one. That's the one that actually leads us across the bar to the next thing. So make sure that you're not dying away. Listen to the difference. It's not as exciting as all the way to the wall. Da da da. Da da da. Just go all the way to the wall with it. Make sure that my teacher, one of my good teachers, Mark Westcott, he's my musical coach I see very frequently. He always says, keep an eye out for the little guys. And that last little 8th note of the arpeggio pattern, that is the little guy. You have to keep an eye out for that guy and really make sure that it's being heard because it's actually the most important one and the easiest one to forget about and just start thinking ahead at your melody instead of actually like taking that particular part all the way to the wall. With the notes, this is my last little thing and then I'm going to call it, with the repeating note on the bars that have the 4 bass notes, this repeating note up top, just do whatever with it. Either keep it soft or let it follow what the bass is doing, but don't overthink it and don't let it be loud. It definitely needs to be behind the scenes, but you don't have to get that technical with what exactly it's doing. I don't even know what I do with it. I just let it follow the dynamic scheme that I'm working with everything else. So just kind of have it ghosting behind it. It definitely should be quieter than the bass notes because the bass notes are the melody. Go over to the link below this and get the downloads of this music. You can get free PDFs of this, the bass by itself. I also have annotated copies with little notes in it talking more about the dynamics. I've got pages with the dynamics in it for you, the chords, everything you've seen, and more sheets like that are there. You can download them for free. All you have to do is sign up and to put in an email, and you can have it for free. Please subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and I look forward to seeing you in the next installment. Take care.